Good morning, you're watching World News live from Warsaw, Poland with me, Anna Kalczyńska. A Russian general has been killed in Moscow in front of an apartment block after an apparent bombing. His assistant was also killed in a blast. Reports indicate an electric scooter exploded just as Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov exited the building. Footage from the scene shows the entrance of the building burned out and two body bags on the ground. Kirillov was the head of nuclear, biological and chemical defense forces of the Russian army. The Ukrainian intelligence service SBU has charged him on Monday on mass deployment of banned chemical weapons in Ukraine. The US President-elect Donald Trump does not rule out the idea of Ukraine giving up part of its territory to Russia, pointing to the extensive destruction in the occupied areas.
Do you believe that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia?
Well, I'm going to let you know that after I have my first meeting. But a lot of that territory, when you look at what's happened to those, I mean, there are cities that there's not a building standing. It's a demolition site. There's not a building standing. So people can't go back to those cities. There's nothing there. It's just rubble.
The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the first North Koreans have been killed in the war in Ukraine. During his Monday evening address, Zelensky said that Russian authorities are attempting to hide real losses among North Koreans, just as they do with the Russian army.
The commander-in-chief of the army has presented a report on the participation of North Korean soldiers in battles on the side of the Russian army. There are many details about the destruction of these forces. According to preliminary data, the Russians are trying to hide the North Korean losses. The Ukrainian defense forces and our intelligence are uncovering the full picture about the real losses of Russian units, which also involve Koreans. Unfortunately, we also have to defend ourselves against them, although there is no reason for Koreans to die in this war. The only reason is Putin's madness, which has gripped Russia and is fueling the war.
Єдина причина – це божевілля Путіна, яке охопило Росію і підживлює цю війну.
The Ukrainian government has ruled out any extension of the existing gas transit deal between Europe and Russia. Kyiv, however, is open to new deals with European countries. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal has said that the current deal that allows for the transit of gas through Ukrainian territory ends on January 1st and will not be renewed. New deals involving gas not originating from Russia are still on the table. However, most European countries have already switched to alternative suppliers. Some, most notably Slovakia and Hungary, have maintained their dependence on Russian gas supplies. The United States is preparing to impose new sanctions against the Georgia ruling party over concerns of democratic backsliding. The country has been gripped by anti-government protests since the government suspended EU accession talks until 2028.
We have been greatly concerned about the state of Georgian democracy, the actions that Georgia Dream has taken to undermine Georgia democracy. You saw us just on Friday impose 20 new visa restrictions on individuals affiliated with the government who have been responsible for undermining democracy in the country, and we will have other actions that we're prepared to take in the coming weeks.
And speaking after the meeting of the EU Foreign Affairs Council, Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski said that while EU sanctions against Georgia have been blocked by Hungary and Slovakia, individual member states could still impose sanctions on the Georgian Dream government on their own.
Of course, membership in the European Union is a privilege, not an imposition. And so we will respect any decisions taken by Georgia. But we sympathize with the people of Georgia. And of course, we condemn the use of violence against protesters. But the discussion was, and the decision was blocked by Hungary and Slovakia.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has traveled to Turkey to meet with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan. They will discuss the transition of power in Syria. Turkey is key to further developments in neighboring Syria. It hosts millions of Syrian refugees and played an active role during the 13-year-old civil war that eventually ousted dictator Bashar al-Assad. The European Union is the largest humanitarian donor for Syria, sending over 30 billion euros in aid since 2011. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has been ousted in a no-confidence vote, triggering snap elections. Polls indicate a likely victory for the opposition Christian Democrats, who are poised to form the next government.
The Bundestag put the final nail in Olaf Scholz's political career, refusing to grant his now minority government a motion of confidence. Only 207 out of 733 MPs voted for the current administration to stay in power. The move was expected by the Chancellor, who called the vote himself.
After an election, all Democrats must be prepared to work together for the good of the country, to build bridges and forge compromises. This is not possible without moral maturity, decency and seriousness, but only with a sense of responsibility for our entire country, for all citizens.
The coalition government, composed of Scholz's Social Democrats, the Greens and the liberal FDP, collapsed in November. The FDP's disapproval of administration's spending policy led it to exit the coalition, paving the way for early elections. Opinion polls predict a win for the opposition Christian Democratic Union in the upcoming vote, although not by a wide enough margin for it to govern alone. All three coalition parties are projected to lose seats.
In this situation, the most probable remains either so-called Grand Coalition, so coalition between the Christian Democrats and the SPD, however, without the participation of Olaf Scholz and his supporters, or least probable option, a coalition between the CDU, CSU and the Greens.
For the last 3 years, the Christian Democrats have been led by Friedrich Merz, who revamped the party's platform. To combat Germany's economic stagnation, he proposes tax cuts. He has also put a greater focus on combating illegal immigration.
Generally speaking, moved towards right. So it was like coming back to the CDU came back to its Christian democratic conservative roots, so to speak, both in terms of economical policy as well as when it comes to approach to the worldview.
Merz has also been a vocal supporter of Ukraine, proposing deliveries of long-range missiles to Kyiv.
Our position is clear, as is that of my parliamentary group. We want to enable your army to reach military bases in Russia, not the civilian population, not the infrastructure, but to reach the military targets from which your country is being attacked.
The anti-immigration Alternative for Germany party is expected to double its seats, although it is unlikely to enter the coalition.
This party is stigmatized, it's isolated. It is an outcast, basically, in German politics, and no other party wants to coalesce with it, wants to be an ally of this party.
Scholz proposed that the snap elections take place on February the 23rd. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier holds the final say on the date, having until December 27th to make the decision.
Polish President Andrzej Duda has hosted his counterparts from the Czech Republic, Slovakia and Hungary. The agenda for the meeting of the Visegrad Group covered military affairs, energy security and coordination of relief efforts during natural disasters.
During the meeting in the mountain town of Wisła, the Polish president suggested that the Visegrad Group set up specialized groups for regional and national coordination.
Every country would delegate its own representatives, who would meet at least a couple of times in order to discuss issues concerning cooperation and information sharing for warning systems and cooperation between service branches.
While the countries are on the same page when it comes to natural disasters, the war in Ukraine remains the elephant in the room. Poland and the Czech Republic are staunch supporters of Kyiv. Hungary and Slovakia, on the other hand, have been more friendly with Moscow.
This war is in its third year. Hungary has been striving for peace from the very beginning. I believe that Hungary, although its possibilities are limited by its size, has been pushing for dialogue. And it's important to see that Europe is starting to discuss peace in a completely different way.
The meeting will continue on Tuesday and no joint declaration is expected.
EU chief diplomat Kaja Kallas addressed the European Parliament on Tuesday. The focus of her speech was the EU's role in Syria and Georgia amid ongoing crises. Meanwhile, a major prize for human rights will be awarded. For the latest, we go now live to our European Affairs correspondent, Sasha Farbach. Sasha, could you please tell us what was the reaction of the MEPs to Kaja Kallas' speech?
Yeah, good morning there, Anya. Indeed, so at this very moment, still behind me in the plenary, Kaja Kallas, the chief diplomat, is addressing MEPs, talking, of course, very much about, as you said, those key issues. It's Syria, and it's also the crackdowns of opposition and the general population in Georgia. Now, we're already hearing, in terms of what MEPs have been saying, is very much a difference of political party and structure, what to do next. Now, on Monday, Kaja Kallas at the Foreign Affairs Council in Brussels has said that she has instructed European diplomats to begin open dialogue with HTS, those rebel groups that seem to now be very much in power after Mr. Assad. Now, the problem here is that there isn't agreement on what to do next in full. Now, at this point in time, HTS is still considered a terrorist group in terms of not just the United States, but also on the EU's list. So let's just hear what the High Representative had to say in her earlier speech today.
We have a key interest in the success of Syrian transition. We need to adapt our early recovery parameters to the new political reality with a view to eventual reconstruction, to start reflecting on a possible revision of our sanctions regime in order to support Syria's path to recovery while keeping our leverage, and to further support accountability efforts at this crucial juncture in order to lay the foundations for transitional justice and reconciliation.
Sasha, Venezuela has been in the center of attention of the MEPs as far as Human Rights Award is concerned. So tell us please more about the Sakharov Prize and its significance.
Yeah, that's right. Indeed, Venezuela has been the spot. In fact, for the Sakharov Prize for this year, there were several finalists, but it ended up being voted on here in the European Parliament back in October. Those winners have been the leaders of the Venezuelan opposition, so dual awards to Mrs. Machado and also to President-elect Urrutia. Now, there's a resolution passed here in September in the European Parliament, very much deciding and saying that the official voice and the official elected president of Venezuela is Mr.-elect Urrutia. Now, this goes without saying. This is significant indeed. This has led to very much attention in this region and this topic. So this will be the award. This goes back to around 1988. So this covers the awards for notable achievements in human rights and democracy. This comes with a €500,000 prize in terms of the individual awarded. Now, later on, that we'll see a press conference here. There's currently a seminar on those finalists. Some of those finalists, I have to say, including Dr. Ibadoglu from Azerbaijan, very much an anti-corruption activist, has been barred from actually attending this event. And in fact, his daughter is representing them here. But it is significant. It shows very much how the European Parliament is standing up to its values. That prize is important. Nelson Mandela is one of the previous winners, and it does attach significance here in terms of what it means for the world. And that ceremony will be later today, and the prize will be given by the President of the European Parliament, Mr. Metsola. And it certainly is going to be a positive signal here from Strasbourg and who that real government is in Venezuela. Anya, back to you.
Sasha Farbach from Strasbourg. Thank you very much, Sasha. And World News ends here, but for more news, more features, more comments, stay tuned to TVP World. Thank you for watching.